Red Bull just made a phone call that 12 months ago would have been unthinkable. The team that built a dynasty around Max Verstappen, the team that has won 4 straight drivers' titles with him, has quietly identified the man they want to replace him. And it isn't a Red Bull Junior. It isn't a hardened veteran. It's a 25-year-old Australian sitting in the cockpit of their biggest rival's car. The name on Red Bull's emergency shortlist is Oscar Piastri. And the moment that name leaked, it told us something Red Bull have spent the last year desperately trying to hide. They no longer believe Max Verstappen is staying. But here's the part that nobody is saying out loud. The reason Red Bull are even considering Piastri has almost nothing to do with Piastri himself. It has everything to do with a clause buried in a contract and a power shift inside Formula One that has flipped the entire driver market upside down. Let me explain why this is bigger than a replacement story. Because if you've been following Max's body language since March, you already know something is wrong. After the Japanese Grand Prix, he sat in front of BBC Radio 5 Live and said the quiet part out loud. "I'm thinking about everything inside this paddock. I want to be here to have fun and have a great time and enjoy myself." At the moment, that's not really the case. That wasn't a soundbite. That was a 4-time world champion telling the sport he doesn't recognize it anymore. And this is where it gets worse. Because Max's frustration isn't with his car. It isn't with his team. It's with the very fabric of the new regulations, the 2026 rules that turn Formula One into something he refuses to call racing. He warned the sport about this in 2023 when nobody wanted to listen. And now, in 2026, every single thing he predicted is happening on television every Sunday in front of the entire world. So what is Red Bull actually afraid of? It comes down to one piece of paper. According to reporting from Sport Bild and Motorsport.com, Verstappen's contract runs through 2028, but it doesn't run the way you think. Buried inside it is a performance clause, originally negotiated by Helmut Marko himself, that allows Max to walk away from Red Bull without paying a single euro in compensation if he is not inside the top 2 of the Drivers' Championship by the summer break. Stop and think about that. Not the top 3, the top 2. And in 2027, the threshold becomes even harsher. He only needs to be outside the championship lead at the summer break to activate it. The driver, not the team, controls the exit. And the entire balance of power inside Milton Keynes shifted the day that ink dried. Now watch what happens next. Because the 2026 season hasn't gone the way Red Bull rehearsed. In Shanghai, Max qualified 8th, almost a full second off Kimi Antonelli's pole, and then lost more ground at the start when the RB22 came up short on battery power. He spent the entire afternoon clawing through traffic, only for an ERS coolant failure to retire him on lap 46. He left China with 0 points. And Red Bull, the team that won the Constructors' Championship just 2 years ago, was emphatically the 4th fastest team on the grid. Not a close 4th. Not a fighting 4th. A flat, embarrassing, distant 4th. Their new team principal, Laurent Mekies, didn't even try to spin it. He admitted, plainly, that the package showed significant shortcomings. And in that one quote, every paddock journalist in Shanghai understood what Mekies was really saying. The clock is ticking on Max Verstappen. But here's the real problem. Even if Red Bull fix the car, even if their in-house powertrains division, in partnership with Ford, somehow drags itself within touching distance of Mercedes, Max may still walk. Because the thing pushing him toward the door isn't entirely Red Bull's fault. It's the regulations themselves. So let me make this make sense for you, because if you don't understand the 2026 rules, you can't understand any of this. Imagine driving a car where roughly half of your power comes from a battery. On the straight, you feel like a fighter jet, full electrical deployment, instant torque, savage acceleration, but the battery only holds so much energy. And once it's empty, the car behind you, still on its boost, walks past you on the same straight like you're parked. You haven't slowed down. The other car has gotten faster in a way the driver didn't control. That's super clipping. That's what Max calls playing video games. That's what he means when he says it doesn't feel like racing anymore. One driver gets to attack at full power, the other is almost crawling, and the gap appears instantly, not because of skill, but because of energy management software. And this is the part nobody noticed. In May, the FIA quietly agreed in principle to shift the 2027 power split. Instead of the current 50-50 balance between the combustion engine and the electrical side, the new ratio will move closer to 60-40 with a nominal 50 kilowatt increase to the ICE. On paper, that's a small adjustment. In reality, it's the FIA trying to drag Max Verstappen back into the sport before he walks out of it. Because they know, Stefano Domenicali knows, Mohammed Ben Sulayem knows. Every commercial partner of Formula One knows. If Verstappen retires at 28, the sport loses its biggest single name since Schumacher. So they bent the rulebook. They tried to fix it for him. And if Max stays, that quiet rule change in May 2026 will be remembered as the moment Formula One admitted it built a regulation set its best driver couldn't tolerate. So, why Piastri? Why not promote from within? Why not Tsunoda, Lawson, Hadjar, Lindblad, any of the names Red Bull has been quietly cultivating? Stay with me, because the answer reveals something Red Bull would rather you didn't think about. The Red Bull Junior pipeline, the system that produced Vettel and Verstappen, has visibly broken. Perez was discarded. Albon was discarded. Gasly was discarded. Lawson got 2 races. Tsunoda has been shuffled between teams for years. The second Red Bull seat has become the most cursed chair in motorsport, a guillotine disguised as an opportunity, and the team knows that whoever replaces Max can't be a project, can't be a development driver, can't be a gamble. It has to be somebody already operating at championship level on day one. Somebody who has fought Max in a straight fight, in equal-ish machinery, and survived. There is exactly one driver under 30 on the current grid who fits that description, and his name is Oscar Piastri. Look at the numbers Racing News 365 lays out. 9 career wins, 28 podiums in 72 Grands Prix. A 2025 season where he scored 7 victories and finished 3rd in the championship, behind Norris, behind Verstappen, but ahead of every other driver in the sport. And he did it in a way that made grizzled engineers in the paddock stop and stare. Quiet, methodical, almost emotionless on the radio. The kind of driver who doesn't make weather and doesn't need to. If you're Red Bull and you're staring at a future without Max, you need a driver who can replicate something Max gives you that nobody else does. Pure, unshakable consistency in a car that isn't perfect. And right now, in 2026, that's Piastri. But here's where it gets worse for Red Bull. Because Piastri is not actually available. Let me say that again, he is not, as of today, a free agent. His McLaren contract, clarified by the team to BBC Sport, runs to at least the end of 2027. And his manager, Mark Webber, has openly said they will not even sit down to evaluate options until midway through the 2026 season. Now, on paper, that should kill the story. Except, and this is the detail that changes everything, multiple reports out of Australia, including from Fox Sports' Greg Phelps, suggest Piastri's deal includes a Hamilton-style get-out clause. The kind of clause Lewis used to escape Mercedes for Ferrari. The kind of clause that can be activated, in his case, if McLaren are seen to be favouring Norris. And after the 2025 season, a season Piastri led for 189 days before Norris overtook him in October and won the title by 2 points, there are people inside that paddock who genuinely believe Piastri is already looking for the exit. Quietly, patiently, the way he does everything. So now, ask yourself the obvious question. If you were Red Bull, in May 2026, watching your 4-time world champion edge closer to the door, knowing the regulations may not save you, knowing your in-house engine is 2/10 off, knowing your junior pipeline is broken, what do? You make a phone call. You whisper Piastri's name into the right ears. You let the rumour leak. Because the moment Piastri's name appears next to a Red Bull seat, two things happen at once. McLaren panic, and Max Verstappen reads it. Now I want to know what you think. Is Red Bull leaking Piastri's name as a genuine plan, or as a warning shot to Max designed to remind him that there is a queue forming for his seat? Drop your answer in the comments, because the answer to that single question may decide the next decade of Formula One. And if you're tracking this story across the season, stay with us. We're covering every twist of the 2026 driver market in detail, so subscribe and don't miss the next one. Because this is where the story turns. The Piastri rumour does not exist in isolation. It exists at the exact moment three other tectonic things are happening inside Red Bull. The first, Helmut Marko, the man who discovered Verstappen, the man who fought to put him in an F1 car at 17 against Christian Horner's own objections, has stepped down. The architect of the entire Red Bull driver program is gone. The second, Christian Horner himself, the team principal who built the modern Red Bull, was dismissed mid-2025 and replaced by Laurent Mekies. And the third, Adrian Newey, the greatest aerodynamicist of his generation, has been gone for almost 2 years, building cars elsewhere. Every single person who created the institutional gravity that held Max Verstappen at Red Bull has left the building. He is, for the first time in his entire F1 career, alone inside a structure he no longer recognizes. So when people ask why Max is thinking about quitting, they're asking the wrong question. The right question is, why on earth would he stay? And this is the part that makes Red Bull's Piastri pursuit feel less like a strategy and more like a confession. They aren't shopping for a replacement out of strength, they're shopping out of fear. Because if Max walks at the end of 2026, or at any point his clause allows, Red Bull doesn't just lose a driver, they lose their entire identity. They become, overnight, a midfield team with a struggling engine program, a new team principal, no Marko, no Horner, no Newey, and no plan. The Piastri name on a shortlist is the smell of smoke under a door. It isn't strategy, it's panic management. And here's the brutal twist. Even if Red Bull do everything right, even if they sign Piastri tomorrow on a blank check, there is no guarantee it works. Because the same flaw that pushed Max to the edge, the same regulation set he hates, the same energy management roulette wheel that makes one car a rocket and another a glider on the same straight, will still be there in 2027, just with a slightly larger combustion engine and a slightly smaller battery. The FIA's 60-40 adjustment is a patch. It is not a rewrite. And Piastri, quiet, methodical, surgical, is exactly the kind of driver who might actually thrive in that environment. Which raises a question I want you to sit with for a moment. What if Red Bull's plan isn't to replace Max because Max is irreplaceable? What if the plan is to replace Max because the era he defined, the era of raw, aggressive, instinctive driving, is over and a different kind of champion is coming? Look at the broader pattern. Antonelli is winning races in his second year at Mercedes. Hadjar is being talked about as a future world champion. Lindblad is climbing the Red Bull ladder faster than anyone since Max himself. The new generation isn't louder than Verstappen. It's quieter, more clinical, more comfortable inside a car that demands you manage software the way old drivers managed tyres. And Piastri is the prototype. He is the first complete product of this new philosophy. Which means, if Red Bull do sign him, they're not just replacing Max, they're admitting the sport has moved past Max. And so has the formula that made him. Now I want you to think about what this means for the next 6 months. The summer break of 2026 is the legal trigger date. If Max is outside the top 2 by then, his exit door is wide open. No fee, no compensation, no negotiation. Red Bull's only defense is to either get him into title contention by July, which based on Shanghai and the current pace gap looks almost impossible, or to convince him that staying through 2027 is worth it because the rule changes will work. They are running out of time on both. And every week that goes by without a Red Bull podium is another week in which the Piastri rumour grows louder, the FIA tinkers harder, and the entire driver market holds its breath waiting for one phone call to drop. The day Max picks up the phone and tells Mikis he's leaving will be remembered as the most consequential single moment in modern Formula One. Bigger than Hamilton to Ferrari, bigger than Vettel to Aston Martin, bigger than anything since Schumacher's first Ferrari deal in 1996. And here is the final thought I want to leave you with. Because the deepest truth about this story isn't about Piastri, or Red Bull, or even Max. It's about leverage. For 2 decades, F1 teams owned their drivers. Contracts ran their full length, buyouts were rare, performance clauses were almost unheard of, but somewhere between 2022 and 2026, the most valuable drivers in the world quietly inverted that relationship. Hamilton's Mercedes clause, Verstappen's Marco negotiated clause, Piastri's reported get-out, even Norris is rumoured to have flexibility. The drivers are no longer the assets, they are the franchises, and the teams, including Red Bull, are scrambling to hold on to them. The Piastri to Red Bull rumour isn't really news about a driver swap, it's news about a sport whose centre of gravity has shifted permanently away from the garages and into the cockpits. So when you hear someone say Piastri could replace Verstappen, understand what's really happening. Red Bull aren't shopping for a driver. They're admitting they may have already lost the one they had. And the team that wrote the rulebook for modern F1 dominance is now reading from one written by everybody else. Tell me in the comments, do you think Piastri actually ends up in a Red Bull? Or is this leak the most calculated bluff in the entire 2026 season? Hit subscribe if you want to be here when the next domino falls. Because if Shanghai was the wake-up call, what's coming between now and the summer break may end up rewriting the next 10 years of Formula One, and the first person to know will be the man holding a clause, a phone and a decision the entire sport is waiting on.